Man, oh man, it was down to the wire, far closer than it should have been, but the Gophers get the win. And you know what? That's all that matters in the playoffs.
Hey,
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota
Whatever
Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Kane Rob, host of the podcast, and we are talking Gophers women's basketball. They find a way to get it done in the WNIT in the third round, bringing home a victory against North Dakota State. And you know what? It was down to the wire. Now, there was a point where the Gophers had a huge lead, and it ended up collapsing a little bit due to the Gophers, a little bit due to the refs, but they find a way to get the win, and that's what's most important. So we're going to talk about what happened in this game, a little bit of a recap, and then also what is to come for the Gophers in the WNIT. Who's next on the docket for the Gophers in their hopes and pursuit for a WNIT championship? And then finally, what will this Gophers women's basketball team look like next season? Because it's never too early to talk next season. So if you enjoy Gophers talk on the daily, be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube here at Locked On Golden Gophers. And I appreciate y'all for tuning in live. So the Gophers beat NDSU for a second time, this time happening in the Super 16 of the WNIT. And you know what? It did not start out well for North Dakota State, starting 0 of 5 from deep. And this is a North Dakota State team that has been really predicated on their success from the three-point line. So that struggle early on helped the Gophers jump to a lead of 18-12. Now, Mallory Heyer was big in that first quarter, stepped up right away, 2 back cuts for some easy layups and knocking down a three-point jump shot. But we flip it to the second quarter, and all of a sudden, North Dakota State comes back, shooting threes, going 3 for 3 right away in the beginning of that quarter in the first 4 minutes and taking a lead over Minnesota 26-25. Now, Minnesota gave up 6 offensive rebounds in that first half, but only 8 on the game. And that was a massive swing for Minnesota, because when they only gave up 8 offensive rebounds, Minnesota had a total of 21 offensive rebounds. And that is winning basketball right there. So the fact that Minnesota could keep the second chance points, second chance opportunities going in this one ended up being a major difference maker for the Gophers to triumph over North Dakota State. Now, heading into the half, Minnesota was up 34-30, and it was a tale of 2 quarters, and it was all based on three-pointers in that first half. Like I said, North Dakota struggled from the first quarter, 0 for 5 from deep, and then 3 for 6 in the second quarter, and it was the opposite for the Gophers in the first and second quarters. The Gophers started out 3 for 6 in the first quarter from deep, and then they went 1 for 4 in the second quarter. And my thoughts at that point were Minnesota needs to work the ball inside to Sophie Hart and Mallory Heyer, because they were doing damage to this North Dakota State team. All of a sudden, we come in the third quarter, and what is the first thing Minnesota does? They work it inside to those 2 players. They score the first 6 points for Minnesota. Minnesota pulls a lead of 40-31, and North Dakota State has to call a timeout in the first 2 minutes of the third quarter. So that was a great way for Minnesota to get some momentum. And they ended up really pulling away in that third quarter because they got hot offensively. 8 of 11 from the floor, 3 of 4 from deep, or I believe it ended up being 3 of 5 because Mal had to throw up a late into the clock three-point shot attempt. But Minnesota was up 58-44 on North Dakota State by the end of the third quarter. Everything was looking great. Everything was looking pretty. It was looking like a coast to another win. And then things got serious. Then things went awry. The refs were in straight silly season mode in that fourth quarter. They couldn't decide what was a foul, what was a charge, what was a this, what was a that. It was all sorts of inconsistent on both sides. And you know what? In the end, North Dakota State ends up throttling back into this game, hitting 3-point opportunities, getting more fouls on the Gophers, making them sit some of their players, and North Dakota State storms back and made it closer than it should have been. Now, Maya Battle, though, she had been playing out of control in those first few quarters. She had 4 turnovers throughout the first 3 quarters of this game, and they're pretty bad turnovers at that. And that is not what we have been used to seeing from Maya Battle in these last few games that we've seen her play. But what we were used to was a Maya Battle coming in the clutch, and that came up full force to end this game. A Maya Battle played like a star in the final closing 2 minutes of this game, including two massive big shots, big jumpers from just inside the 3-point line. A Maya Battle hits both of those shots to give the Gophers lead with under 1 minute to go, and that is what did it. That's what sealed it. Those scoring opportunities plus a clutch defensive steal from Nia Holloway, and all of a sudden the Gophers are able to put this one away at the charity line, and they end up winning this game 69-65, and they're moving on to the next round of the WNIT. But what is most impressive to me in this back half of games in Maya Battle's growth of this season is the fact that her whole offseason was predicated around making difficult jumpers, shooting the ball better, being more comfortable from the 3-point line. Her coaches, her teammates, her other staff have all been encouraging her to shoot the rock and have confidence in it. And we've seen that develop, come to fruition, but this was a different kind of clutch. Late in the game, you've been struggling throughout the game to buy a basket, struggling throughout the game with turnovers, and all of a sudden when it matters most, you put it on the line, you knock down the shots, and you bring your team a major victory. So overall, I am excited about that. I'm excited to see that moving forward, and I'm seeing a comment on the live show right now basically saying that people in the gym say Mara had a lower left body injury in the fourth. They also said it on the radio broadcast. We will see what happens there, but what we do know is that the Gophers won and that they're going to have to continue on in WNIT. Hopefully Mara Braun is healthy throughout that. Now, what's next in the WNIT? Who do they take on next? Who could they play in the next few rounds? That is what we're going to show. And also, yes, thank you, Carl, for throwing that comment in there. Grace Graholski, G Money was a baller, 4 3-pointers from deep. She came up clutch for this team. When these last few games, she's had some struggles in shooting, but she really stepped up for this team and helped them charge the way forward. So, like I said, we're going to talk about what's next for the Gophers in this WNIT. Who will they take on in the Great Eight? We're going to talk about that and more coming up next. First, I got to talk to you about the friends that help pay the bills, and that is none other than Manscaped. This episode is brought to you by the Spring Cleaning Champions, and this season, make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders and the below-the-waist grooming. Clear out the winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like springtime flowers, and you can embrace the season and join 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our special offer going to manscaped.com and use code Locked On for 20% off plus free shipping. Who doesn't love free shipping? I know I do. So definitely give it a try. And I mean, you don't have to worry about the scrapes and cuts in different ways that you always are holding your breath a little bit for, because this 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next gen skin safe blade heads and a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. So whether you're looking to craft your signature look or clean up the neckline, these are always the right tools for the job. Get 20% off and free shipping with promo code Locked On at manscaped.com. Again, that's Locked On as the promo code at manscaped.com. There's nothing like a little bit of spring cleaning, and they're helping you out over there. And while we're at it, I do want to talk about our new friends of the show too, Bettor Together, because right now is the best time. Is your bracket busted, but you want to stay in the game? Then we're introducing Bettor Together. That's BETTOR Together, for the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where team play triumphs talent, and you can win with your friends, not against them. So now is the time to do it, because I encourage Gophers fans to go out there and show they are the best players by participating in the Fan Challenge series for a chance to win real money prizes. It's time to test out the group chat, put them to the test, and let's prove that yours is the best. And today you can download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code Locked On for a chance to win over $1,000 in cash prizes. You can definitely give it a check out over at Bettor Together. Download the app and use promo code Locked On, because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. All right, Gophers fans. So we are talking about what is next in this WNIT tournament. The Gophers got the win against North Dakota State. So what remains in front of them? Now, I think overall, when you look at this whole playoff, postseason play when it comes to the women's tournaments, there are now 3 of them. And I think the WBIT could be kicking themselves and wishing Minnesota was a part of their tourney with a healthy roster. Now, that being said, like we said, Sophie Hart, Mara Braun, they've been on minutes restrictions. Hopefully Mara is good from what people are saying. Somebody mentioned the radio broadcast heard she might have gotten hurt. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully it was just a little cautionary, or people see a limp every now and again and people are like, oh my gosh. So hopefully she's all good, but overall they have to keep going. And this is great for the Gophers, the youngest team in the Big Ten Conference for the women's side, playing deep into tournament play and postseason play, because it's only benefiting the team down the stretch. And that's going to be massive, not only for this season and building confidence, but the goal is the NCAA tournament, right? The goal is to get there. And I think if this team was healthy, they would have had a shot to get there. And who knows how much noise they could have made being such a younger team, seeing how competitive it is right now. But they're getting postseason experience and they're understanding what it takes to keep on going, win in advance, survive in advance. They're getting that experience now, which will still benefit them moving forward. So with this win, all 3 Big Ten teams that are in the WNIT have made it to the Great 8. And for Minnesota, they will be taking on Wyoming, who took down South Dakota tonight as well. Now, it would have been pretty neat to have played South Dakota since Don Plitzweit coached there and found a lot of success there. But nonetheless, Wyoming has taken on Nebraska this season, Gonzaga, BYU, Oklahoma State, and Creighton when it comes to the kind of power type conference schools. They lost all of those matchups except against BYU, where they were able to win 86-74. But overall, they have proven that they can play against top conference teams, but they haven't been able to find that success in getting the wins very much. Now, they are rated the 118th team in the net rankings and should be a team Minnesota can find a way to win, and they play through their star center. So it's going to be a big game for Sophie Hart. Allison Fertig is their best player over on Wyoming. She leads the team in scoring with 13.8 points per game, but also 8.2 rebounds per game. So she is a player who gets it done in multiple facets for her team. Like I said, Sophie Hart is going to be a big player for the Gophers. Hopefully she won't have to play on as much of a minutes restriction for this one, because that is going to be a tough player to stop at 6'4" and being a force on the inside. Now, if Minnesota can find their way to a win, if they can beat Wyoming and continue to advance, then they would await the winner of Troy versus ULM. Now, those 2 teams, both teams that are in that kind of low major conferences, and Minnesota has done well against those schools throughout their non-conference this year. When healthy, they've been able to put those teams away. So hopefully they could keep that going and keep that rolling and find themselves not only winning that game in the Fab Four, but finding themselves in the championship of the WNIT, which is a realistic possibility for this Gophers team. And if they can get all the way there, there is a possibility they play another Big Ten team in order to call themselves the WNIT champions. Now, who are the other Big Ten teams in the WNIT? If you didn't know, it is Purdue and Wisconsin, both of them also in the Great 8. Minnesota played Purdue early in the early parts of the season before we switched the calendars to 2024. And I believe they won in overtime. So that was a tight one. And then they lost twice to Wisconsin, once with the injuries to Mara Braun and Sophie Hart. So I would love if all things could play out the way that I'm hoping, fingers crossed, Minnesota can keep on winning, find themselves in the championship and take on the Badgers, the rivals, for a WNIT championship on the line, a third matchup, and help this Gophers team get right versus their rival, because losing multiple games to the Badgers stinks, but losing 3, that would not be acceptable. So hopefully the Gophers can keep on trudging through this, keep on winning, keep on getting postseason play experience, and we'll see how far it goes. But overall, it's a great thing for the Minnesota Gophers. Like I said, helping build them up for not only this year, but next year. So let's talk about next year. Let's talk about what this Gophers women's basketball team will look like in 24-25. Who is joining the roster? Who could be leaving? That and more we're going to talk about coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Nissan, because they are bringing you a March Madness bracket highlight each and every week. And this week, as it always is brought to you by Nissan, because we're highlighting one team that stands out above the rest. They pushed it a little further than the rest, just like the Nissan 2024 all-new SUVs. These teams were able to take it to another level, and we got to talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide because they can only be described as the Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch. They've really created a lane for themselves entering the tournament as one of the hottest teams, and then they go on to take down North Carolina in the Sweet 16. They'll look to take a battle to Clemson to earn a trip to the Final Four, the first time in program history. So that's definitely the Alabama Crimson Tide, who are the Pathfinder. And you can take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure at nissanusa.com. Again, shop nissanusa.com. All right, I wanted to close out this live stream with a couple thoughts on next year. Now, if there's any questions, if there's any thoughts for the Gophers moving through this WNIT or next year, feel free to drop them in the comments over on YouTube. I appreciate y'all who are tapped in live. But let's talk about what this Gophers team could look like in 2024, because in my opinion, I think the sky is the limit, not just because this team was super young and the coach is well decorated when it comes to winning and finding success, but also because you got to think about how this team came into this season. They came into the season having traveled across the world and gotten new elements of the offense and the system and the defense and the style of play, basically the fundamentals of what Coach Don Plitzuweit wanted in the early parts of the offseason. Then you're getting towards almost time to start the games, and that's where you can start to implement the more intricate concepts. But again, everything is getting added on the fly. Every time they see different teams and different strategies and game plans, the elements are added on the fly, and you have to teach it in a very quick amount of time with a very young team. So that doesn't allow players to always play free. It doesn't allow them to be instinctive or work out of habit and work out of instinct and natural. I've seen this in practice time and time again. It's rather, I've seen this once or twice and, oh, this is what I should have did, but maybe I was a beat slow. And so there's little hiccups here and there. But next year, you have a ton of players returning. You have a coach who is able to put more in-depthness into her system and get the players more instinctual, playing faster and ready to grind. That is what should be more exciting for this Gophers team and the fans next season, is because with them being so young, they're going to have far more experience, and they're going to have far more knowledge of the system, and they're going to be able to take it up another notch. Now, when you're looking at the team as the roster, the only departures I believe that are coming from players who have played significant minutes for the Gophers would be Janae Sanders, who is out of eligibility. I could also maybe see Maggie Zanano if she wanted more minutes to potentially flirt with the transfer portal. But if she loves this squad, if she loves the culture, if she loves the role that she's playing, I could see her sticking around too. So those are the only kind of two that I could see who have minutes really leaving. But everybody else I feel like is going to be locked in and ready and hungry after the injuries that kind of derailed the season. But you still have new players coming in. You have Kenna Johnson, who is a freshman, who is currently early enrolled with the team and practicing with this squad, building chemistry, building understanding, getting that knowledge that we talked about of the system early. Even though she can't play in the games, she's still working within it, and she'll be able to play faster and quicker and almost like she's a sophomore once we hit the fall of next year. And with Kenna, you have a player who was a top 60 recruit in the 2024 class, and in high school in that 2022-23 season, she averaged 26.1 points per game, 10 rebounds a game, 2.7 steals per game. So you love that defensive effort, and then 2 assists as well. She is a combo guard, so maybe she could step into a role off the bench that can sub in for Mara or Amaya Battle at times and be able to take on some of that scoring load and the distribution, but being able to help this Gophers team continue to find success in the scoring front when their star players are on the bench. So I think that's going to be a big player for them. Kennedy Click coming back. She had a season-long injury this year. She would have been a true freshman. So next year she will be a redshirt freshman. Now I believe she could be a key facilitator off the bench for Minnesota, someone who can really step into that Janae Sanders role that we have seen from the Gophers this season. And I think she can maybe even elevate that role a little bit more. She was a great player over at Maple Grove. She's got some speed that she plays with. And I think overall she could step really nicely into that first off the bench role for a guard when it comes to defensively, when it comes to facilitating the offense, and as a ball handler, a piece that this Gophers team could really use. And then finally, you got Tori McKinney coming in, and I'm telling you right now, I think she is going to be a player that Coach Don Plitzaway absolutely loves long-term because she is a menace defensively. And that can be her calling card, her opportunity to get on the floor for the Gophers. She was named the Defensive Player of the Year in back-to-back years by Prep Girls Hoops for the AAU season. So defensive stalwart. And as she continues to work on her scoring, I believe she's a state champion this year with Minnetonka. Those are three players that, yes, they're young players again. Yes, they might not have the experience to help this team right from the get-go, but I think they are players that will have great roles with this team both next year and moving forward in the long term. So super excited by that, but I think the Gophers will still look to the transfer portal. I think they will still try to find maybe one or two key players that have some experience, that have some veteranness, maybe some tournament experience to them, but that can mesh with this group. And I think you look for someone that can play that post role, kind of like we see from Sophie Hart, because when she's gone off the floor, there isn't someone that can step into her role. Ayanna Johnson, I like Ayanna Johnson. I like the different skill sets she brings, especially her kind of mid-range jumper that she doesn't seem scared to shoot. But I think her post style and Sophie Hart's post style are very different. So I think you try to find someone that can fill a similar role as Sophie Hart, that brings veteran experience, that can maybe stretch the floor a little bit, but then you can allow Ayanna Johnson to play more of that power forward role, a 4 role, and still sometimes play a 5 role, playing more of a small ball lineup. I think that could help the Gophers both with versatility, both with defensive presence, but also with not losing that big interior post presence on the offensive scoring, but also on the glass when Sophie Hart is not on the floor. And then finally, if they do look another direction in the transfer portal as well, I think they will look for someone who can create their own shot, an isolation type scorer, someone who can still find themselves in the offense and balanced within it all, but someone who can, when the shots aren't falling for Mara Braun or when Maya Battle is struggling from time to time, who can step up and create, whether it's off the bench, whether it's due to an injury or what have you. I think those are the two types of player this Gophers team could be missing when it comes to veteran presence. Like I said, maybe they only grab one player from the portal, maybe they grab two, but I think overall that's what you're looking at for the Gophers next year, along with Mara Braun, Amaya Battle, Grace Groholski, Sophie Hart, Mallory Heyer, all taking more developmental jumps, playing quicker, understanding the game and the system a little bit more. This Gophers team is going to be a fun one. I hope you're sticking around. I hope you're excited about not only the rest of this WNIT tournament play for them, but what is to come with Coach Don Plitzaway. That's going to do it for us here at Locked On Golden Gophers. I truly appreciate you and all of you tapping in, all of you subscribing to the podcast, following along. We're definitely going to cover Gophers women's basketball throughout the offseason and into the next season as well. So if this is your first time, be sure to hit subscribe or follow us wherever you get podcasts. And if this is your second, third, or beyond time, I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I will see you later. We're signing off. This is Gophers Kane Rob over on Twitter. If you haven't caught me yet, I tweet about the games, I get into the pressers, and I ask questions to the coaches. Hopefully you'll follow along, and I can't wait to watch more Gophers women's basketball. I'll see you next time. Row the boat, Sky Go Gophers, as always, and please don't forget to subscribe.